Good morning, everyone. I'm Randall Stevens, and this is the Mavens of Content episode, Aaron? 15,362.
That's
We
right.
were joking about this.
15,362.
We were joking about this last week, Ben. It was the first episode, but we were like, I don't think you're supposed to ever call anything like number one. Nobody wants to be one. So we were joking about that. But anyway, good morning to everyone. Again, I'm Randall Stevens. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called ArcVision. And I'll let Aaron introduce himself again.
Aaron Maller here from Parallax team in Dallas, Texas.
And our very special guest today is Ben Glunz, who's the founder, CEO, I guess is your title, at Anguleris as well. So welcome. I'm going to switch to Ben's pretty face here instead of us. So try to go in real time. So this is our second time doing this, and we just spent the last 15 or 20 minutes trying to learn how to use all this fancy software to be able to do these things, and I think we've got it figured out. So hopefully this is going to go smoothly. But thanks for joining us, Ben. I'll give just the 2 minute. Everybody can go back and watch the first episode where Aaron and I talked about the Building Content Summit, which is coming up here in about a month out in Phoenix. But the kind of purpose of this podcast is that Aaron and I are going to try to grab people like Ben from the industry that are the gurus about what's going on in BIM content related issues, and it's a very complicated subject, which is why we have this Building Content Summit going on. But what we hope to do is through these episodes pull people like Ben in and have some really good conversations about what's going on. Ben's got some really exciting new stuff that he's launching, a product called BIMsmith that we're going to talk about this morning. So welcome, Ben. Introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Ben. I'm the founder and CEO of Anguleris. Lead a team out of the Northwest Chicago area. Been working in the BIM content space for a number of years. After leaving the architecture industry, my friends like to say I went over to the dark side. Depends who you ask. But yeah, I was a Revit user, frustrated with the state of BIM content. So a number of years ago, my partner and I struck out to form Anguleris. And so in the last couple of years here, we've begun to pivot and said we can only go so far with just regular content. And so we set out to create some solutions that would help take it the extra mile. So that's really the birth of BIMsmith, which is our latest product.
Before we jump into all the specifics and the cool stuff you're doing with BIMsmith, I'll relate to what you just said. I don't think it's a problem to jump out of architecture. In fact, there's all these interesting things about why architects and their people who are architects are trained in design make really good, I'll claim almost anything. There's this. There was a blog post that I saw an architect wrote that was like the 10 reasons why you should quit your architecture job today and go into software. And there was one thing on there. I've never practiced architecture. I have a degree in architecture and background, but I've always been around the technology side of it. And I've always had this. I teach entrepreneurship too, so I think a lot about how do you go through all this process, and I could never articulate as well as, and I'll have to find that blog so I can give him credit. But one of his 10 reasons was that architects know how to put structure to things that are unstructured, and I'm like, that is like exactly the point about why architects and designers make good software architects or anything, because an early stage anything, right? When it's like, I've kind of got this idea, it's so fuzzy, and ultimately you have to put some structure to that in order that everybody else around it can begin to talk about it even and to develop it. So, we can talk more and more about stuff like that, but it is interesting that it's this mindset of being able to problem solve, really, and do these types of things. So anyway.
Just don't ever tell a structural engineer that architects give structure to things that don't have structure.
Yeah. Their head would explode, but that's what we are. We're bomb throwers, right?
That's right.
So anyway, well, thanks. We started right before this call. We're jumping in a little bit more about what BIMsmith is, and I think Aaron's going to Aaron actually has the capability on his machine to kind of pull up the, let me flip over here, see if we can pull up the website.
Yes, my machine can open a website.
Yes. Well, I'm going to claim that it's because I'm also recording this on my machine that I can do
Okay,
that.
that's good.
Anyway, we'll get that stuff figured out. But Aaron, why don't you kind of just drive from
Absolutely.
here, kind of showing what's going on, and then we can let Ben kind of jump in and talk about this stuff. So
Absolutely. I don't know if while I'm driving through the website, if Ben, you want to kind of tell the story of what BIMsmith is and what it's meant to do. We've just been testing it out this morning. I think it brings some pretty interesting value to the table. So if you want to tell me where you'd like me to go kind of through the demo, I'll be happy to drive.
Sure. So just to start, basically BIMsmith is a cloud-based solution for configuring product data and BIM content, and can be found at bimsmith.com. So you can access it, from any computer that has access to the internet. So you don't have to download any software or anything, and it's completely free. So no risk there. So this solution was born out of the idea that regular content can only go so far. We were running into problems where manufacturers had specific logic things and things that could or couldn't be done with their product, and content became so bogged down and so heavy trying to fit all that logic into it. And so we said, why not build that content with that logic already in it on demand for the user? And so the first space that we looked to where we saw this being a problem because of the lack of control within platforms like Revit is walls, floors, ceilings, and roofs. And so that's what we've launched BIMsmith with. So if Aaron clicks there on My BIMsmith, it takes us into the BIMsmith dashboard. And once we get there, you'll see that we have a few streams for each of these product areas.
Sorry, I have slow internet.
Yeah, now I'm going to rib you.
Yeah.
Let's get you out of the boonies.
Yeah,
there.
we're working on it.
So you can see here we've got a couple streams, and then we can launch into the wall interface, to show how this works. So you just click on it. We've got about 30 quotes that are randomized here.
I was gonna comment of I've seen a LeBron, I've seen a Jonathan Ive. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty much anything from Daniel Burnham to Kanye to Anchorman. So it's a nice mix, and those were crowdsourced, so lots of fun. So anyway, when we get in here, you'll notice an interface that's somewhat similar to what you know in Revit for building walls, except that it's based on real products. And the analogy I like to use is you wouldn't go into a car dealership saying, I'd like to buy a generic car with generic specs and generic MPG, because it's not really a real thing. And so if you go in saying, I want a car that has 22 miles per gallon and it has to be blue and it has to have XYZ stereo, then you can start to be a little bit more specific, and that dealer will be able to tell you what they can offer you that meets your requirements. And so that's the basic idea here. As we move from left to right, we get from least specific to most specific. So if you type in something like brick, that might be all that you know. But from there, as you can see, Aaron's chosen Norman brick, and it has the actual size there. And so the educational component about this, though architects claim to know everything, everyone can use a little reminder sometimes as to what's out there on the marketplace and what real products are available. And so you can see here we've got everything from generic products to manufacturer equivalents. So we've got about 15 manufacturers at the time of this podcast who have already put their products into the system. So gypsum is a great one there. So if you choose a product there, you'll see National Gypsum, is already in there with their products. So if you click on that, it'll bring up the appropriate product that matches what your criteria were. So you can see that you chose Type X fire rated 5/8 inch. Right now, they've only got that one product in the system that meets those criteria. So you can read there on the sidebar next to the visualizer, all about that product. You can click through that link. The link will take you to the actual product page where you can find more information about that. And then again, when you download everything, you'll get the specs, the cut sheets, and then of course a wall system family for Revit built to your specs. So maybe you want to add a paint layer there next. Again, if you're like a lot of folks, you just say I need paint. Well, now we take you to the next level and we say, okay, interior latex, and from there, maybe I need to choose my sheen. And so now Sherwin-Williams has all of their products in as well. And so we can now see, of the 20 products that Sherwin-Williams has put into this system, only 3 of them meet the criteria for what I'm looking for. And so if I click on the properties button there, I can also choose from over 1,500 Sherwin-Williams colors.
So I have to interrupt Ben for a second because we're actually picking out colors for our house right now, and so I'm super excited because that is the actual color that we picked out for one of the rooms. And so now I can, it's very geeky, but there is a Revit model of the new house, and now I can say I got the paint color, it's in there.
Of course there is.
Absolutely. No, on a more serious note though, and I know I said this before we started our call today, but I think it's great that it's building components, but it's not having us pick a material and then manually having us pick a size. And I know I was just telling this to Ben, but I mean, that's not how building products work in the real world. We don't go into Home Depot and say, I would like to buy insulation, and then we can type in whatever size we want. Somebody rolls it down the hall. It doesn't work that way. So I think this is a really great setup. This right here in particular, I'm looking at you, Autodesk. I kind of wish it just worked that way, but it's great that it works that way in BIMsmith Forge. So I think this is pretty neat.
Yeah, and you can see there with things that should be custom, like your air layer, you can type in that value as you see fit. And you can go right up to 99 inches if you wanted to. But that's fully customizable by the users in the areas that matter. So anytime that little compass icon lights up blue, there are additional properties, and more of them will be lighting up as time goes on. But you can just click on that stud layer, and so you can see that we have the ability to put in spacing and choose from mill and gauge. And again, you can kind of learn what's available for your criteria.
So once you've built this bin and downloaded and brought that into your specific project that you're working on, is you're keeping then a version of that on the site, and is the idea that the person can come back and that's now like a typical wall type that they might use and pull into a next project?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a couple strategies that we're suggesting. One is if you want to store typical wall types in generic form, you can, and then go back and replace them with manufacturer content per project. Or you can just build all of your typical wall types using actual manufacturer products. So if you see there, Aaron, if you click on any of those layers on the layer summary to the right, it will pull up the manufacturer-specific information for you to look at again, and it'll store that there. And the great part is, since this is web-based, all of that will be replaced in real time as manufacturers update their product information. So if for some reason the Gold Bond Fire Shield wasn't available anymore, you would receive a recommended replacement. So as you store these wall, floor, ceiling types, it will keep that up to date for you because it's being curated by the manufacturers.
Nice.
So if you go back to the stream there, and you can show them the other type that you built earlier, you can see that then we have all these file formats available. So you can download a Revit system family, all the 3-part specs for the products, PDF cut sheets, and then the JPEG is just going to be what's in that visualizer. So maybe if you chose Revit, you'd get all of that right there. And then in these materials, we've actually built in description tags. So if you use the default description tag for materials right in Revit, you can throw together a wall section very quickly because all of those will be pre-populated for you. So that's really exciting. I built a wall start to finish with a fully detailed wall section in under 10 minutes the other day. I had all the cut sheets, all the spec sheets, everything I needed to be able to specify that product.
That's great.
That's cool.
So Ben, maybe give us a little, how did this all come about? How was the problem identified, and how did you validate, through that process that this was the right way to go?
So we've worked with several hundred building product manufacturers, industry leaders like Sherwin-Williams, and so on and so forth. And we noticed that there was kind of a gap. You could get so far, but then at the end of the day, these manufacturers were acting like they were off in silos. And that's just not the way the BIM workflow works, and for that matter, the real construction project. In nearly every project, drywall does not exist on its own. Contrary to what those manufacturers may think. It's almost always going to interact with paint and studs, or be put onto a hat channel. And so we wanted to start breaking down these silos, because what we found is National Gypsum would make their content and put it up, and Sherwin-Williams would put it up, and then you'd have to go out and search for all of those products separately and then recomposite it as a system family. And even then, the data that you put in, it takes so much time, and it's not necessarily going to be accurate because you're kind of fudging it, right? So the idea here is that why do that when we can do this all quickly and basically have a track that you can run on with real proven products that are on the market today?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about, we're working on some content management software here at ArcVision, a product called Avail. But a lot of the genesis of that was along the same lines of what you're talking about, which is, and maybe it goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation, that everybody thinks they're the brightest in the center of the world, right? Everybody has their own, like ours is the most important thing. The reality is if you're a designer, architect, designer, working on a project, you're sourcing and getting information from hundreds, if not thousands, of different sources. And the idea that you've got to now go out, as that designer, to each of these places and gather up that information and bring it back, is it's a futile exercise, for one, and very inefficient. So the idea that information is going to come back to some centralized point, which is what I'd say you're doing. I describe BIMsmith as you're going out and aggregating some of these different suppliers, in this case, the people who would make up a wall section, and bringing all that information together on behalf of the designer, right? You're servicing the designer, at the same time, you're then servicing the provider of those materials. So
yeah, there's something else I really like about it, and I don't know if you can still see my screen, but Ben was showing me earlier that when you're in the different assembly types, the walls or the floors or the ceilings, you can open this drawer over on the side, and from there, like if you want something with a particular STC rating, you can check that box, and things that are pre-compiled by other parties. And this is why this is important to me. I was saying I'll be really excited to see when the UL ratings and the fire ratings get put in there. But, having worked in architecture, this is something that I find extremely frustrating. Is every architecture firm I've been to, everybody basically redoes the research related to UL assemblies and redoes building the walls, and even when you have them in a template, they have to do their due diligence, and they have to reinvestigate, and they have to. Now, I'm not saying that, as designers, that we're not going to do that anymore. Of course, life safety and whatnot, it's always going to be the architect's job to review those things. But the fact that they always start from a baseline of 0 and then work their way through it, the hypothetical, well, I'll do this research on every job, doesn't actually happen. What happens is they copy it from the last job they worked on. So if Forge has the ability for, Underwriter Laboratory to say, well, UL 555 is no longer valid, and it gets removed, and they replace it with something else, at least we know that there's a, we're not reinventing the wheel on every job just to get UL assemblies.
Well, and to that point, the manufacturers, and the reason there aren't too many yet is we've just launched just a few weeks ago, so the manufacturers are still building theirs out. And part of that process is protecting the designer from, bogus information. So anytime that a manufacturer claims that they have an STC assembly, we do require the testing data. So, if a company wants to put in a floor system that they say has an STC of 54, they show us that certificate, we build it, and they can choose to partner with other products that they recommend who are already in the system. or they can just show generic products for the other layers. But the bottom line is they're the ones saying our product allows you to achieve this, and so it kind of gives the designer that extra assurance as they're using the system starters.
Yeah, my theory of where all of this, I think all the things that you're doing, all these different pieces of software that are coming together and information that's coming together, this is really what's going to push BIM, the promise of BIM forward. And I think from a business standpoint, what's interesting is that it's going to squeeze tons of, call it waste, right? I mean, and a lot of that is in just the information passing, the sales process, there's a lot of expense that's a lot of the cost
Yes.
is buried in just all of that stuff, not what you're actually buying, but the process of getting all this information. And that's where from an innovation standpoint, all these types of things are going to begin to squeeze that out of the process. And ultimately, I think for the manufacturers that begin to jump on board of these things, they're going to have to now rethink about how they're structured and how they're delivering information and what their staffing and stuff looks like, because there's going to be a much more efficient way to deliver all this. But I think it's
save them cost and pass that on to their constituents as well.
Yeah, that's what makes me get up. It gets me excited because from a technology standpoint, you're always saying what can we do to make something more efficient.
Yes.
And these are the exciting things I think that the next decade are going to hold in this industry. So.
And the funny thing is, we weren't sure how manufacturers were going to respond to this. We've been working on this for what feels like forever, but we started publicly talking about it last October with manufacturers, and we were very pleasantly surprised that the manufacturers are almost as excited about this, if not more, than the designers, because they get to tell their story. They get to show how their product actually works, and they get to make real recommendations. So, they're diving into this, full force. So that's very exciting as far as potential.
Yeah, I mean, it looks, like I said, from a user point of view, I think it would be interesting. I'll be really interested to see how it ties together when users start building out their dashboards with the types that they use, because obviously a lot of architects and engineers, I'm sure, they keep their own, standard wall types and whatnot in a template in a location because they use them all the time. And I'm going to be really interested to see how we can kind of connect them as things go forward. So like you said, when a manufacturer says a product's no longer valid or they swap out the product data, that's obviously going to update here. And then where the opportunities are for that to update what I have in my files over here, I think is really going to be great.
Yeah, totally agreed. And like I said, we have tons of manufacturers coming on board, industry leaders that everybody knows, folks like Sherwin-Williams and National Gypsum, Crossville Tile, Weyerhaeuser, they're bringing all their plywoods and studs and things like that. So all these products, even to the point where folks like Grabber have gotten on board. And so we're actually supplying fastener data as metadata in the wall system, suggesting the type of fastener, because we're able to know, hey, there's a layer of gypsum that is next to a stud. So we know what type of fastener is appropriate. And so we're able to educate the designer on what to do in that situation as well. So it really just opens up the playing field for all sorts of users to be able to build all sorts of systems, and for all sorts of products who maybe were on the sidelines before to really get in the game with the BIM workflow.
Well, I think kudos to those manufacturers that are jumping on board, first and getting that, but I think that as these types of things progress and mature, those companies that have gotten in there, I was talking with somebody the other day, just in theory, about where kind of all this stuff moves. And one of the things about brands and nobody wants their product to get beaten down to where they're not being paid for it. And my analogy was like, look, Apple showed years ago when they moved into the music industry that it wasn't about that people weren't willing to pay for things. It was about, are you servicing me in the right way? And
Right.
I think the things that we're all kind of collectively working on are examples of when those brands and those manufacturers can move in these directions. they're going to move to the top of the heap because it's more about convenience and time and doing all those types of things. I was actually having this conversation with a friend of mine who's got a startup in the finance side of the industry, and the same things are going on there. It's like it's all about speed, efficiency, convenience, all of those types of things. And if you service people the right way, that's what building a brand is all about. They're gonna stick with your brand. Right. They only have the capacity to know a half dozen or so and kind of understand them. They're going to keep going back to those over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that's really what it comes down to: speed, and efficiency, which can be the same thing, and then also accuracy, which if you're an architect, accuracy actually translates to time and more revenue, because if you're not going back second and third time to fix something, if you get it right the first time, that translates as well. And so that's really some of the underpinnings of this platform.
So let's turn this to, I know, Ben, you stepped up. I know you're planning on you've launched this product, but you're starting to, kind of get out to the world with it. And you signed on as one of the gold sponsors of the Building Content Summit that's coming up. And I know you're going to be at RTC. And so, thanks for doing that. But maybe you can talk a little bit about, kind of what you're trying to do at these conferences coming up and how you're looking at getting this information out.
Yeah, so I think it's great that we finally have a place to talk about the issues of BIM content, because in any BIM platform, the pieces and the puzzle pieces or the stones that go into the foundation are the pieces of content. And your BIM assets
Absolutely.
are only as good as the content that you're using, right? And whether that's a reference to your workflow or the end product, the more we can get better content and get people thinking intelligently about content, I think the better off the entire industry will be, and the better off the entire BIM workflow will be. And so what we're really setting out to do here by being part of the conversation at BCS is we're kind of stuck in the middle, being former users ourselves and former architects, and then also working with building product manufacturers. We have the opportunity to kind of stand in the middle and say to both sides, here are the two sides to this story. How can we work together? You both have a lot to offer each other, and so that's really the narrative that we want to reinforce at BCS. It's not about always using generic content, and it's not about always using manufacturer content.
Right.
Time and place for both. And so we hope to continue to reinforce that narrative as we sit down at BCS. And also facilitate that through our platform here, as there are both generic and manufacturer content. I was saying to Aaron earlier, there's over 20,000 possible combinations in this system, and that's before you even combine two layers. So it really is exponential what you can do with this tool.
It makes me get a little nostalgic, because this is kind of a funny thing. One of my best friends actually works in education, kind of a topic derailer. He works in education in terms of teaching teachers how they teach children. And wall types is actually a conversation that I have with my education friend all the time, because I explained to him, I said, no, you go into 5 different architecture firms and they have 5 completely different setups for walls. He's like, are there really that many combinations of walls? And I'm like, no, they're the same exact product. It's, I mean, given geographical differences, international standards, whatnot. But I knock on this drywall right here. It is the same exact wall as any of the buildings on this block. And I'm sure if they were all drawn by different architects, they were all classified completely differently. And
even if the architects drew them differently, the guys building it all built them the same. Right?
But it comes back to, if you break things down to the actual material layers that are available, why do so many design firms feel the need to reinvent the wheel? And can a solution that says this is, in all practical terms, what's actually available to you in the real world, it's not going to be named what you like, it's not going to be classified the way you like, but it's the real product, so you don't have to spend any more time doing it. And
you're being upended by your cat behind you there. It's either a cat or a large rat. I'm going to assume it's a cat.
Yes, that is the office cat.
There we go.
He's
office kitty. Oh well, we lost.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great initiative though, because I think that's how we, like Ben said, I think that's how we knock people out of the comfort zone of, well, I want to use this content because I like using this content, and we start the conversation of, well, use the actual content, and if it's ugly or it doesn't work or it doesn't fit, let's get to something that fits.
Ben, I lost your video.
Yeah, sorry. Hold on 1 second.
I was going to switch this to we'll try to wrap up here in a few minutes, so that there's a chance that my wife might make it all the way through this. We were joking about how you've got to really be into this to sit through this long of a conversation about this kind of stuff. But no, I wanted to talk a little bit. We'll maybe kind of wrap this up, Ben, about. I know you're sitting in some fancy new offices.
I don't know about fancy. It's still.
No, it's cool. You guys are up in Chicago, right? So maybe tell us a little bit about
Sure.
you've moved into some new digs, and
Yeah.
maybe we need to start we'll start doing Mavens of Content cribs. That'll be fun.
Well, it's actually a really funny story. So 6 years ago when Freddie and I started the company, it was the two of us and a couple of lawn chairs. And we've grown the team to over 30 people, here in the Chicago area, and we outgrew our last space, and so we've moved into a building that we've purchased. It's a 1893 building in downtown Elgin, Illinois, and so we've renovated the first phase of our project here, which I'm currently sitting in, and we did design the whole project using Revit, so. That's really exciting, and then we also had the opportunity to utilize BIM content that we built ourselves, and a number of the manufacturers have given us products that they have BIM content for, as a part of a marketing push that we're doing here. So we're trying to use as much of our own manufacturers as possible. So it's kind of a neat narrative that you'll be hearing more about in the next couple months here.
Well, I'm in Lexington, Kentucky, so I'm only about a 5.5 hour drive from you. I'll have to jump in the car, come up. We'll take the video camera and we'll do our first cribs.
That'd be great.
That'd be fun. I'd love to see it.
BIM road trips. Yeah. Brian Mackey.
The one thing about.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say the one thing, when you're a designer, you're in this industry, it's like. Usually have pretty cool office spaces, so it would be kind of fun to kind of walk around and see what everybody's done with their different offices.
Yeah.
Brian Mackey and I were joking around about BIM road trips because he and his family usually road trip to the different events, and I may actually be road tripping to RTC this year. So be a lot of fun.
Very cool. How long is that drive?
It's 1,100 miles, so it's
wow.
It's a heck of a drive.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah,
I've got a 6-hour rule. If it takes me more than 6 hours in a car, I'd try to get on a plane.
Well, we are bringing some goodies to RTC, so it's I might need the trunk space.
Very cool. Well, Ben, thanks for being our guest number one. You get to claim.
Thank you for having me. It was.
We'll have to make a T-shirt, and wait a minute. Let me go back to full screen here. Aaron, introduce. What's the cat's name again?
This is Marble. And this is a game he likes to play while I'm working on content, which is I'll lay right on your hand so that you can't use the mouse anymore.
Yeah.
So
I'm boss, you're not.
A game of cat and mouse.
I'm getting really good at not using my arm anymore, and you just move the mouse like this, and it's pretty good.
Yeah, maybe it's massage therapy. He's figured out. It's like, okay. But Ben, congrats on the new product. I think it's obviously really cool stuff, and it's a lot of that conversation that we're having at the Building Content Summit, which is, what are the missing pieces to really make, to make this stuff more efficient, and so that people can get their work done, and the manufacturers can get their content in the right shape, and how do they need to deliver it, and all those types of things. So looking forward to seeing you in about a month from today when we're recording this or so. We're gonna
1 month and 1 day.
Yeah, 1 month, 1 day. We'll be out there. Yep.
We'll have our booth there at RTC and at BCS, so we'll look forward to meeting everybody there.
Yep, great.
Awesome.
All right, we'll sign off. Episode 13,562 is now complete, and see you guys soon.
See you
soon.
Okay,
thanks a lot.
All right, bye.